The Galactic Council chamber was the most impressive structure Jihoon Park had ever seen. It floated in space like a giant crystal, catching light from distant stars and throwing rainbows across the darkness. Inside, representatives from 847 different alien species sat in their designated seats. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked like they were made of living water. Jihoon had been humanity's ambassador to this council for 3 years now, and he still found the diversity amazing. Today's session seemed routine at first. Jihoon sat in the human section with his small team. Hyunwoo Kang, his chief of staff, sat beside him reviewing papers on his tablet. Above them, orbiting in a human warship called the Steadfast Horizon, Captain Mirai Cho watched the proceedings through a live video feed. This was standard procedure. Every species kept at least one military vessel nearby just in case. Jihoon maintained his usual pleasant expression as the council debated various matters: trade disputes between mining colonies, environmental regulations for new settlements, technical specifications for communication satellites. Boring stuff mostly. He had become good at looking interested while his mind wandered to more important things. The humans had earned a reputation over these 3 years. Other species called them remarkably polite. Almost too polite, some whispered. When the council made decisions that hurt human interests, Jihoon would smile and thank them for their consideration. When other ambassadors were rude or dismissive, he remained calm and courteous. When humanity's requests were denied, he would simply nod and say he understood their concerns. Many council members had started to think humans were weak, easy to push around. After all, every other species threw tantrums when things didn't go their way. They threatened. They demanded. They showed anger, but not the humans. The humans just kept smiling. Then came the motion that changed everything. Speaker Vex Thalan, a massive insectoid creature with 6 arms and compound eyes, brought forward a proposal. His voice echoed through translation devices that let everyone understand each other. The council wished to temporarily seize 3 human colony worlds: Tajan 4, a mining planet; Nari Station, a research facility; and Bora, an agricultural world where human farmers grew food for millions. The reason given was resource redistribution. Some species were struggling economically, the speaker explained, and these worlds could help them. It would only be temporary, of course. Just until things stabilized. Jihoon listened without changing expression. Inside, his heart was pounding, but his face showed nothing. Beside him, Hyunwoo's fingers tightened around his tablet, but he too remained silent. The vote was called. One by one, species raised their appendages, tentacles, or whatever they used to signal approval. The numbers climbed. 782 in favor, 65 against. Humanity's 3 colony worlds would be seized within the week. Jihoon stood slowly when his turn came to respond. Every eye in the chamber turned toward him. They expected him to accept this gracefully, as humans always did. Perhaps he would ask for better terms. Maybe request compensation. Surely he would remain polite. He smiled his usual gentle smile. When he spoke, his voice was calm and measured. He thanked the council for their careful consideration of this matter. He acknowledged their concerns about struggling species. He understood, he said, that difficult decisions had to be made for the greater good. Then he made a simple request. Might humanity have 48 hours to consult with Earth's leadership before the seizure began? It was only proper to inform his government of the council's decision and discuss the transition details. Speaker Vex Thalan's mandibles clicked in what his species used as laughter. Of course, Ambassador Park. 48 hours seemed quite reasonable. The council would reconvene after that time to finalize the arrangements. Several other delegates made pleased sounds. The humans were being cooperative as always. This would be easier than expected. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, Jihoon gathered his materials. Hyunwoo walked beside him toward the exit. To anyone watching, they looked like they always did. Calm, professional, perhaps a bit disappointed, but accepting their fate. Just before stepping through the doorway, Jihoon reached up and touched his earpiece once. Just once. A quick, subtle gesture that most would miss. High above in orbit, Captain Mirai Cho saw that signal. She had been watching the entire session, her jaw clenched tighter with each vote cast against humanity. When Jihoon touched his ear, she straightened in her command chair. That single gesture was a code they had established 3 years ago when Jihoon first took this assignment. It meant one thing and one thing only: stop pretending. The time for politeness was over. Mireille opened a communication channel to Earth Defense Command. The connection was encrypted with codes the Council didn't know existed. When Admiral Yuna Shin's face appeared on her screen, Mireille spoke clearly. The Council just voted to seize Tajan 4, Nari Station, and Bora. Ambassador Park has signaled for Protocol 7. We have 48 hours. Admiral Shin, a woman who had spent 40 years in military service, allowed herself a thin smile. Protocol 7. They had hoped it would never be necessary. They had prepared for it anyway. Finally, after 3 years of watching humanity be pushed around and disrespected, they could show the galaxy what humans were really capable of. Activate all assets, the Admiral ordered. Wake up the fleet. Contact all station commanders. Begin moving pieces into position. And Captain Cho, make sure your crew is ready. In 48 hours, the Council is going to learn something important about humanity. What's that, ma'am? Mireille asked, though she already knew the answer. That politeness is a choice, not a weakness. Back in the Council chamber, the delegates congratulated themselves. They had handled the human problem efficiently. Those colonies would provide resources for struggling members, and the humans had accepted it with their usual grace. Perfect Speaker Vexithalan was particularly pleased. The humans had been a useful addition to the Council. They paid their dues, followed the rules, and never caused trouble. But they were also profitable targets because they never fought back. Perhaps after this went smoothly, the Council could claim more human assets. Why not? They obviously wouldn't resist. None of them noticed the small changes happening around them. Communication satellites adjusting their positions. Human ships that had seemed to be on routine patrols suddenly changing course. Defense platforms that humans had helped install around Council stations coming online with new programming. In the human delegation quarters, Ji-hoon finally let his smile fade. Hyunwoo sealed the room against listening devices and activated their secure communication system. 3 years, Hyunwoo said quietly. 3 years we've been taking their insults and their dismissive attitudes. 3 years of them treating us like we're nothing. Ji-hoon poured himself a drink from a bottle of Earth whiskey. His hands were steady. 3 years of gathering intelligence, he corrected. 3 years of letting them underestimate us. 3 years of preparing for this exact situation. He took a sip and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, human warships were moving into position. Somewhere out there, soldiers were preparing for combat. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was about to learn a lesson. The Council thought they were dealing with sheep. They were about to discover they had been negotiating with wolves the entire time. Wolves who had been very, very patient. The 48-hour countdown had begun. The human delegation quarters were designed to look simple and modest. Clean white walls, basic furniture, a few plants from Earth to make the space feel homey. The Council members who had visited always commented on how humble humans were. They lived in such plain spaces while other species demanded luxury. What the Council didn't know was that those white walls contained the most advanced communication shielding humanity could build. The simple furniture hid enough computing power to run a small city. And those innocent plants from Earth sat in pots that doubled as sensor jammers. Now, with the door sealed and the security systems active, Ji-hoon Park stood before a holographic display that filled half the room. On the screen, Admiral Yuna Shin looked back at him from Earth. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen more combat than most people could imagine. Next to her stood Do-Yun Lee, head of Human Intelligence Services. He was younger, only 47, but his mind was sharp as broken glass. How bad was it? Ji-hoon asked quietly. The voting, I mean. How many species stood with us? 65 out of 847, Do-Yun replied. Most of those were smaller species who fear the Council's power. They voted against the seizure because they worry they'll be next, not because they actually care about justice. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. He had expected that. The galaxy operated on power, not principle. The strong took from the weak, and everyone pretended it was legal and proper because the Council said so. Admiral Shin leaned forward. Then it's time, Ambassador. Time to show them what we really are. Are you certain you're ready for this? I've been ready since day one, Ji-hoon said. I've smiled at beings who think we're primitives. I've thanked them for insults. I've accepted their condescension with grace. All because you needed time to prepare. Tell me the preparation is complete. The Admiral's stern face softened into something that might have been a smile. "Oh, it's complete. Tohyun, show him." The intelligence chief pulled up files on the holographic display. What Jihoon saw made his breath catch. Ship registries, thousands of them. Military bases marked on star charts. Weapon specifications, training records, supply lines. "For 3 years," Dohyun explained, "while you kept the Council's attention on diplomatic matters, we've been building. The Council thinks humanity has maybe 50 military vessels. They're wrong." He changed the display. Now it showed a region of deep space far beyond Council sensors. In that darkness, dots of light appeared. Hundreds of them. Each one was a human warship. "We have 347 capital ships," Dohyun continued. "Each one more advanced than anything the Council flies. We built them in secret shipyards that the Council doesn't know exist. We've been testing weapon systems that would terrify them, and every single vessel is crewed and ready for combat." Yunwoo Kang, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "What about our colonies? The ones they plan to seize?" Dohyun smiled. "Those aren't just colonies. Every civilian settlement we've built has military infrastructure hidden underneath. Taejin 4 looks like a mining operation. Below ground, it's a fortress with enough firepower to hold off a fleet. Nari Station appears to be a research facility. It's actually a command center with some of our best strategic computers. And Bora, the farm world? Those agricultural domes hide launch sites for long-range missiles." Jihoon felt something he hadn't let himself feel in 3 years. Pride. Not the false modesty he showed the Council, but real pride in what his people had accomplished. They had been smart, patient. They had planned for the day when courtesy wouldn't be enough. "What about their military?" he asked. "The Council must have forces we need to account for." Admiral Shin took over the briefing. "The Council has about 10,000 vessels total. Sounds impressive until you understand how their military works. Most of those ships are old. Many species contribute outdated vessels just to meet their obligations. The ships don't train together. They use different communication systems. Their command structure is political, not practical. Admirals get their positions through bribes and favors, not skill." She pulled up tactical analysis. "In a straight fight, our ships are faster, better armed, and better coordinated. But we're not going to have a straight fight. We're going to fight smart." From above, transmitted through secure channels, Captain Mirai Cho's voice joined the conversation. "I have 47 ships in position around this station. We're cloaked. The Council sensors can't detect us. When you give the word, Ambassador, we can disable every Council military vessel in this sector within minutes." A new face appeared on the holographic display. This was Sora Lim, chief engineer aboard the Steadfast Horizon. She was younger than most of the command staff, only 34. But she understood alien technology better than anyone. "We've had 3 years to study Council ships," Sora explained. "Every time they invited us for joint exercises or technology exchanges, we were learning. Their shields operate on predictable frequencies. Their weapons have long charging cycles. Their engines are powerful but inefficient. We know exactly how to defeat them. But this isn't just about military force," Dohyun interjected. "We have something more powerful than weapons. We have truth." He pulled up another set of files. These showed financial records, communication intercepts, and video evidence. "For 3 years, my people have been documenting every corrupt act, every crime, every lie the Council has committed. We have proof of slave labor on mining worlds. We have records of embezzlement. We have evidence of species that were eliminated because they opposed Council policies. It's all documented, verified, and ready to broadcast." Jihoon studied the evidence. This was worse than he had imagined. The Council wasn't just corrupt. It was rotten to the core. How many people across the galaxy had suffered while he smiled and played the diplomat? As if reading his thoughts, Admiral Shin spoke gently. "You played your role perfectly, Ambassador. Every species that suffered under Council rule will soon be free. But first, we need to break the Council's power completely, not just militarily. We need to destroy their legitimacy, make it impossible for them to claim authority ever again." "So what's the plan?" Jihoon asked. "All of it. I need to know everything before I walk back into that chamber." Admiral Shin laid it out. Phase 1 would be the reveal. When the Council reconvened, Jihoon would drop the diplomatic mask. He would let them see humanity's true strength. Captain Mirai would decloak the fleet. The Council would see that they were surrounded, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. Phase 2 would be the strike. While the Council was still reeling from the revelation, Human forces would hit Council military infrastructure across multiple systems, not civilians, not populated areas, just military targets, shipyards, weapons depots, command centers, surgical strikes that would cripple their ability to respond. Phase 3 would be the exposure. Do-hyun would release all the evidence of Council corruption to every civilized world. The Council's own people would see what their leaders had been doing. Trust would evaporate, authority would collapse, and finally, Phase 4 would be the Reformation. Humanity would propose a new galactic government. One based on equality, transparency, and actual justice. Species could join or stay independent. But the old Council, the corrupt and arrogant Council, would be finished. It was ambitious, dangerous, it would change everything. But looking at the evidence, looking at the prepared forces, looking at his team's determined faces, Ji-hoon knew it would work. He took a deep breath. Then let's do it. Let's show the galaxy who humanity really is. Hyun-woo pulled up the speech he had been drafting. This is what I've prepared for you to say when we reconvene. It's nothing like your usual addresses. Ji-hoon read through it. The words were sharp, uncompromising. They spoke of humanity's patience and the Council's mistake. They explained that courtesy had been a choice and that choice was now revoked. Every sentence was designed to make the Council understand they had misread humanity from the beginning. Perfect, Ji-hoon said. Send it to me. I'll practice until I can deliver it without any doubt in my voice. They need to see that we're absolutely serious. The holographic conference continued for hours. They reviewed every detail, every contingency, every backup plan. When they finally ended the call, Ji-hoon sat in silence for a long moment. 46 hours remained. In that time, the galaxy would change forever. The Council would learn that the polite, humble humans they had dismissed were actually the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. Not because humans were cruel or violent by nature, but because humans understood something the Council had forgotten. That real strength doesn't need to announce itself. It just waits patiently until the moment it's needed. That moment had arrived. The Council chamber filled with delegates once again. 48 hours had passed since the vote to seize human colonies. Most of the Council members arrived in good spirits. They expected Ambassador Park to return with some kind of compromise offer. Perhaps the humans would ask to keep one colony while giving up the others. Maybe they would request financial compensation. Whatever it was, the Council was ready to negotiate from a position of strength. But when Ji-hoon Park entered the chamber, something was different. He walked with the same measured pace as always, but there was a change in his bearing. Beside him walked Captain Mirai Cho, dressed in the full military uniform of the Earth Defense Force, dark blue with silver insignia, a sidearm visible at her hip. Her expression was cold and professional, the delegates noticed. Conversations died down as the two humans took their positions. This wasn't normal protocol. Military personnel didn't usually attend council sessions. What was happening? Speaker Vexathalan called the session to order. His 6 arms gestured expansively as he welcomed everyone back. He turned his compound eyes toward Ji-hoon with what passed for a pleasant expression among his species. Ambassador Park, he said through the translation system, "We are pleased you have returned to discuss the transition of your colonies. I trust Earth's leadership has been reasonable about the Council's decision. Now what terms would humanity like to propose for—" "No terms," Ji-hoon interrupted. His voice was calm but firm. Something in his tone made several delegates sit up straighter. "I'm sorry," the speaker said, clearly not sorry at all. "Did you say no terms?" "That's correct," Ji-hoon replied. "We're not here to negotiate the surrender of our colonies. We're here to inform you that your decision has been rejected. The seizure will not happen. Not today. Not ever." A ripple of shock went through the chamber. Several delegates began speaking at once. Had the human just refused a council decision? That wasn't how this worked. The council voted. Species complied. That was the order of things. Ji-hoon continued, his voice cutting through the noise. "For 3 years, humanity has observed council protocols. We have been patient, accommodating, polite. You interpreted this as weakness. That was your first mistake. You voted to seize our colonies, believing we would negotiate. That was your second mistake. You assumed humanity's kindness meant we lacked the capacity for violence. That was your fatal mistake." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in a dozen different languages. Their translation devices struggled to keep up with the volume of outrage. How dare these newcomers speak this way? How dare they refuse? How dare they threaten? Speaker Vexthalen's voice boomed over the chaos. Ambassador Park, this is completely unacceptable. You will apologize immediately and accept the Council's authority, or humanity will face expulsion and military action. Do you understand the consequences of what you're saying? Jihoon nodded once. Captain Mirai activated a control on her wrist. Suddenly, every screen in the council chamber came alive with tactical displays. The delegates fell silent as they saw what was being shown. Ship positions, weapons systems, defense grids. But these weren't council assets. These were human vessels, and there were so many of them. 47 warships, Mirai said, her voice echoing in the stunned silence, all surrounding this station, all armed, all with weapons locked on your military vessels. We've been here the whole time. You just couldn't see us. The display shifted. Now it showed a wider view of council space. More dots appeared. Hundreds of them. Each one representing a human warship. 347 capital ships, Mirai continued, positioned at strategic points across your territory. Every major world, every trade route, every military installation. We've been watching everything. The council thought humanity had 50 ships at most. Seeing the true number was like being hit by cold water. Several delegates stood up, reaching for communication devices, trying to contact their homeworlds, trying to verify what they were seeing. Oh, you'll want to know about your defense systems, Mirai added. The displays changed again. The Council's own military networks appeared, but they were highlighted in red. Compromised. All of them. We've had access to your security protocols for 2 years. We can disable your shields, lock down your weapons, and shut down your communications. And we will, if you make this necessary. This is impossible, someone shouted. You're bluffing. You're showing us fake data to scare us. Captain Mirai smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. Would you like a demonstration? She touched her wrist control again. Outside the station, through the massive windows, something changed. The stars shimmered and shifted. Ships appeared. Massive human warships that had been cloaked moments before. They hung in space like metal giants, their weapons clearly visible. Real enough for you? Mirai asked. Panic rippled through the chamber. Delegates who moments ago had been confident and dismissive now looked terrified. Some tried to activate emergency protocols. They discovered that nothing worked. Humanity had locked down the station's systems. You have 30 seconds to rescind your vote regarding our colonies, Mirai said. Her hand moved to her communication device, ready to give an attack order if needed. Speaker Vexthalen tried to maintain his authority. This is an act of war. The Council has over 10,000 ships. You cannot possibly, had, Jihoon interrupted quietly. Past tense. Hyunwoo, if you please. Hyunwoo Kang activated another set of displays. These showed live footage from across Council space. Shipyards burning, not destroyed but disabled. Weapons depots sealed shut by precision strikes. Command centers going dark as their power systems were surgically removed. No civilian casualties. No collateral damage. Just clean, professional military operations happening simultaneously across 12 different star systems. Your military infrastructure is currently being neutralized, Jihoon explained. Special forces teams trained specifically for operations against your technology. They know where every critical facility is located. They know exactly how to disable them without killing anyone. But make no mistake, Speaker. Your ability to wage war is ending as we speak. The chamber was silent now except for the quiet sounds of delegates breathing heavily. Some looked angry. Most looked shocked. A few looked absolutely terrified. They were beginning to understand. The humans had been hunting wolves while pretending to be sheep, and the wolves had never suspected until the trap closed around them. One delegate stood up. She was Councillor Moravine, an aquatic species representative. She had been one of the 65 who voted against seizing human colonies. Her voice was quiet but clear. How long have you been planning this? Since the day we joined the Council, Jihoon replied honestly. We hoped we would never need to implement these plans. We hoped the Council would prove to be what it claimed to be, a force for justice and cooperation. You proved otherwise. You taught us that in this galaxy, power is the only language that matters, so we learned to speak it fluently. He walked to the center of the chamber. Every eye followed him. When he spoke again, his voice was firm and left no room for doubt. You have 1 hour to vote again on the matter of human colonies. This time I strongly recommend you choose differently. If that vote fails, if you insist on trying to take what is ours, Then we will show you exactly what humanity is capable of when our patience runs out. And I promise you, Speaker Vexthalan, you do not want to see that. The displays showing human military might remained active. The Council could see those ships. Could see the ongoing operations against their infrastructure. Could see proof that everything the humans claimed was absolutely real. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Every single delegate voted to rescind the seizure order. Even Speaker Vexthalan, his pride crushed, voted to let humanity keep their colonies. But Ji-hoon wasn't done. As he would soon show them, saving their colonies was just the beginning. Now came the real lesson. Now humanity would teach the Council what happened to predators who mistook mercy for weakness. The galaxy was about to change forever. The Council sat in stunned silence after their unanimous vote to return the human colonies. They thought it was over. They thought the humans had made their point and would now return to diplomatic negotiations. They were wrong. Ji-hoon Park remained standing in the center of the chamber. He hadn't moved, hadn't smiled, hadn't shown any satisfaction at their vote. This worried some of the more perceptive delegates. If the humans had gotten what they wanted, why weren't they leaving? The vote you just cast, Ji-hoon said slowly, saves your colonies from seizure, but it doesn't address the larger problem. It doesn't address what you've become. Speaker Vexthalan's voice held a hint of anger now. What are you talking about, Ambassador? You've made your point. You've demonstrated your military capability. What more do you want? Justice, Ji-hoon replied simply. Doyun, show them. Doyun Lee, standing near the human section, activated a new program. Every screen in the Council chamber changed. What appeared now wasn't military data. It was something far more damaging. Financial records. Communication transcripts. Video evidence. All of it showing Council corruption on a massive scale. But the humans didn't just show it to the Council. They broadcast it everywhere. Every civilized world in Council space received the transmission simultaneously. Billions of people across hundreds of planets suddenly had access to the truth about their government. The evidence was devastating. Mining operations on supposedly protected worlds, using slave labor from species that had been conquered and silenced. Embezzlement schemes where Council officials stole billions of credits meant for disaster relief. Weapons testing on populated planets with entire cities suffering mutations and illnesses. Political assassinations disguised as accidents. Species that had mysteriously vanished after opposing Council policies. Their homeworld stripped bare of resources. Every piece of evidence included names, dates, financial transactions. Video footage. Humanity had documented everything with meticulous care. There was no room for denial. No way to claim it was fabricated. The proof was overwhelming. The delegates began to panic. Some tried to shut down the screens. Others attempted to access their communication devices to do damage control. A few simply sat frozen, realizing their careers and possibly their lives were over. The broadcast included specific revelations about individual Council members. Councillor Thexmar, who represented a warrior species that valued honor above all else, was shown abandoning his troops during battle to save himself. The video was clear. While his soldiers died fighting, he had run to his personal shuttle and fled. His people would never forgive him. Speaker Vexthalan's crimes were even worse. Evidence showed he had personally authorized the genocide of an entire developing species. Their planet had valuable mineral deposits. Rather than negotiate or trade fairly, he had ordered their elimination. Military forces had bombed their cities while he watched from orbit. The species had been completely erased. Dozens of other delegates faced similar exposures. Corruption, murder, theft, slavery. The list went on and on. Some tried to leave the chamber immediately, hoping to escape before their own people could respond. They found the doors locked. Captain Mirai had sealed the station. Nobody was going anywhere until this was finished. Ji-hoon's voice cut through the chaos. For 3 years, my people gathered this evidence. Every crime, every act of corruption, every species you harmed. We documented all of it. We hoped we would never need to use this information. We hoped you would prove worthy of the authority you claimed. You failed. He began walking slowly around the chamber, his words echoing in the silence. You called yourselves a council, a government. You claimed to bring order and justice to the galaxy, but you were nothing more than powerful thugs who took what you wanted and punished anyone who resisted. You dressed up your crimes in legal language and official votes, but that didn't make them less evil. The broadcast continued across the galaxy. Reactions were immediate. On worlds that had suffered under council rule, people filled the streets celebrating. Former slaves saw hope for the first time in years. Species that had been oppressed began demanding their freedom. The council's authority, built on fear and lies, was crumbling in real time. Honest political leaders, those few who hadn't been involved in the corruption, began reaching out to humanity. They wanted to know what came next. They offered their support for whatever humanity had planned. Junior military officers, disgusted by what their superiors had done, started broadcasting their willingness to defect. Trade networks began shifting toward human-aligned systems. In the council chamber, Councillor Moravine stood up again. She was one of the 65 who had voted against the seizure. She was also one of the few whose name didn't appear in the corruption files. Her voice shook slightly as she spoke. "You've destroyed the council," she said to Jihoon. "Completely. Even those of us who tried to do right by our people will be tainted by association. Was this your goal all along? To tear down everything we built?" "Oh," Jihoon replied, his voice gentler now. "Our goal was to force you to be better, but you chose corruption over reform. You chose power over principle. So yes, we're tearing down what you built, because what you built deserved to fall. But we're not going to leave a void. We're going to help build something better in its place." Captain Mirai stepped forward with a data pad. "This contains humanity's proposal for a new galactic government. One based on actual equality and transparency. One where every species, no matter how small or weak, has a real voice. One where decisions require genuine consensus, not just the powerful imposing their will on everyone else." The proposal included several key elements. First, the council as it currently existed would be dissolved completely. Second, a new assembly would be formed with equal representation for all species. Third, humanity would maintain veto power over military actions to prevent future aggression. Fourth, an independent court system would be established to prosecute corruption. Fifth, all proceedings would be public and transparent, and if we refuse, Speaker Vexthalin asked, though his voice had lost all its earlier confidence, "Then humanity will establish our own galactic order," Jihoon said bluntly. "Species can choose whether to join us or remain independent. But given what we've just revealed about your government, I think most will prefer our alternative. You'll find yourself leading an empire of one." Across the galaxy, the choice was already being made. Oppressed species were declaring independence from the council. Formerly loyal members were demanding the reforms humanity proposed. Military units were standing down, refusing to follow orders from leaders they now knew were criminals. The council's power wasn't just damaged, it was gone. Do-hyun added one more detail. "We've also frozen all council financial accounts. Every credit you stole, every bribe you took, every illegal transaction. We have access to all of it, and we're going to return that wealth to the species you stole from. Some of you will face trial for your crimes. Others will simply lose everything you gained through corruption. Either way, the old system is finished." Several delegates broke down completely. Some wept, others sat in shock. A few became angry, shouting about humanity's arrogance and overreach. But their words were hollow. Everyone in that chamber knew the truth. The council had brought this on themselves through decades of corruption and abuse. Councillor Moravine looked at Jihoon with something like admiration mixed with fear. "You didn't just defeat us militarily," she said. "You destroyed our legitimacy, our moral authority, our right to lead. That's far more devastating than any weapon." "Yes," Jihoon agreed, "because we learned something important about power. Military force can conquer territory, but only legitimacy can govern it. The council had neither the right nor the ability to lead anymore, so we took both away from you." He addressed the whole chamber one final time. "You have a choice to make. Join us in building something better, something worthy of the authority you claim to have, or step aside and let those who are willing to do better take over. But understand this, the old council is dead. What comes next will be decided by those who care about justice, not those who only care about power." The broadcast ended. The evidence remained available for anyone to review. Across the galaxy, a new order was being born from the ashes of the old, and at its heart stood humanity, no longer polite and accommodating, but strong and determined to build something better. The council had mistaken courtesy for weakness. Now they understood the truth. Humanity had been courteous because they chose to be, not because they had to be. And when that choice was no longer possible, humans proved they could be something far more dangerous. They could be just. 6 months had passed since the day the council fell. The galaxy was different now. Better in some ways. Still struggling in others. Change on such a massive scale was never simple or clean. The new Galactic Assembly met for the first time in a redesigned chamber. Gone were the elevated platforms where powerful species had looked down on weaker ones. Now all representatives sat in a circle. Equal. The architecture itself sent a message about what this new government would be. Ji-hoon Park had been elected as the first speaker. The position would rotate every 2 years among different species to prevent any one group from dominating. But for now, the Assembly had chosen him. Perhaps because he represented the change they wanted. Or perhaps because they feared what would happen if they didn't cooperate. Probably both. He still maintained his calm diplomatic manner. Still spoke with courtesy and respect. But now everyone knew what lay beneath that polite exterior. They had seen humanity's teeth. They had witnessed the consequences of pushing humans too far. The politeness was now understood for what it truly was. A choice made from a position of strength. Across the galaxy, the reforms were taking effect. Former slave worlds had been liberated. Humanity had sent military forces to free populations that the Council had kept in chains for decades. Those forces stayed only long enough to ensure the transitions were peaceful, then left. Conquest wasn't the goal. Freedom was. Corrupt officials faced trial in new independent courts. Some were convicted and imprisoned. Others fled to remote systems trying to hide from justice. Human intelligence services tracked them patiently. There was no statute of limitations on what these people had done. Eventually, they would all face consequences. Trade had become more equitable. Species that had been economically oppressed were receiving fair prices for their goods and resources. Poverty was declining on dozens of worlds. Food production increased as agricultural planets were no longer forced to give away their harvests at below cost. Medicine and technology flowed more freely to those who needed it. Captain Mirai Cho had been promoted. She now commanded the Galactic Defense Force, a combined military made up of ships and personnel from many species. Her job was to protect member worlds from external threats and prevent any single species from becoming too powerful. She trained her officers with a philosophy she had learned from humans. Be polite, be professional, but have a plan to defeat everyone you meet. It sounded harsh, but it worked. The new military wasn't about conquest or oppression. It was about maintaining the balance that let smaller species feel safe. And everyone knew that humanity would step in if that balance was threatened. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Some species resented human influence. They called humanity tyrants who had overthrown legitimate authority. Extremist groups formed, claiming the old council had been better. They conveniently forgot about all the corruption and suffering that system had caused. One group went beyond words. They attempted to seize a human agricultural colony, trying to prove that humanity could be challenged. The attack was coordinated and well-planned, but human intelligence had seen it coming. The response was swift and precise. Human forces disabled the attacking ships without destroying them. Special teams boarded the vessels and captured every attacker without killing anyone. Then humanity did something the old council never would have done. They brought the attackers before the new independent courts and gave them fair trials. The message was clear. The new order would defend itself effectively, but it wouldn't become cruel or tyrannical in doing so. Justice, not revenge. That was the difference. Counselor Moravine had become one of humanity's strongest allies. She served as a bridge between humans and species that were still uncertain about the changes. In her speeches across the galaxy, she told the same story. The humans taught us something we had forgotten, she would say. True civilization requires both compassion and the capacity for violence. The wisdom is knowing when to use which. The old council had violence but no compassion. Some species have compassion but no ability to defend it. Humanity has both and the discipline to use them appropriately. Admiral Yuna Shin had retired after the restructuring. She served as an advisor now, helping train the new combined military. When asked if she was satisfied with how things had turned out, she gave a simple answer. "We didn't conquer the galaxy," she said. "We saved it from itself. That's the difference between us and the old council. They took power for themselves. We used power to create something better for everyone." In schools across hundreds of worlds, children learned about what had happened. They called it different things in different languages, but the story was the same. The day humanity's patience ended, the fall of the corrupt council, the beginning of the new order. Whatever name they used, the lesson was clear. Power without ethics leads to tyranny. Ethics without power leads to victimization. Real civilization requires both, held in careful balance. Military academies studied the human strategy, how they had prepared in secret while appearing harmless, how they had gathered intelligence for years before acting, how they had combined military force with moral authority to achieve lasting change. The phrase human politeness became shorthand across the galaxy for courtesy backed by capability. One day, as Ji-hoon stood in the assembly chamber reviewing documents, a young aide approached him. This was Minho Choi, only 24 years old, one of humanity's newest diplomats. He looked nervous. "Sir," Minho asked quietly, "do you think they'll ever forget what we did? The military demonstration? The evidence we released?" "All of it?" Ji-hoon smiled, the same gentle smile he had worn when pretending to be harmless. "I hope they never forget," he said. "Not because I want them to fear us, but because I want them to understand us. We are capable of terrible things. We choose not to do them. That choice is what makes us worthy of the power we hold." He paused, looking out at the representatives from hundreds of worlds working together. Then he added, "But never let them forget the other lesson. Kindness is a choice, not a weakness. The moment they forget that, the moment they mistake our courtesy for inability, well, we've shown them once what happens. Let's hope we never need to show them again." Minho nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand what it meant to be a human diplomat in this new galaxy. To be genuinely kind and respectful, while never forgetting that humanity's politeness was backed by the most powerful military force in known space. Outside the assembly building, human warships remained on station. Not threatening, just present. A quiet reminder that humanity's polite mode could be turned off again if necessary. The ships were maintained perfectly. Crews trained constantly. Weapons were kept ready. But the hope, the dream that had driven everything humanity did, was that those weapons would never be needed again. That the lesson had been learned. That the galaxy had seen what happened when the strong oppressed the weak and had decided to choose a better path. Do-hyun Lee, still heading Human Intelligence Services, continued his work. But now he focused on helping other species build their own intelligence capabilities, teaching them how to spot corruption early, how to document crimes properly, how to hold leaders accountable. Prevention was better than intervention. Sora Lim worked with engineers from dozens of species, sharing technology that had previously been kept secret. She helped them improve their ships, their defenses, their infrastructure, not enough to threaten humanity, but enough to defend themselves and contribute to the common good. The galaxy was healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. Species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to cooperate. Worlds that had suffered under the old council were rebuilding. Children were growing up in a galaxy where justice actually meant something. And through it all, humanity maintained its dual nature, polite and diplomatic in daily interactions, helpful and cooperative in building the new order. But always ready to drop that polite mask if threatened, always prepared to show their teeth again if someone forgot the lesson. Late one evening, as the assembly session ended, Ji-hoon walked through the empty chamber. He thought about how far they had come. 3 years of pretending to be harmless. That one terrible day when the pretending stopped. 6 months of building something better. Captain Mireille joined him, her military uniform a reminder of the power that backed their diplomatic efforts. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked. "All the preparation? The waiting? The careful planning?" Ji-hoon looked up at the stars visible through the chamber's transparent dome. Out there, billions of beings were living better lives because humanity had been willing to act. "Yes," he said simply. "It was worth it. We gave the galaxy something it desperately needed. Not just our strength, but our vision of what strength should be used for." Miri smiled. "And if someone tests us again? If they forget the lesson, then we'll remind them," Ji-hoon replied, politely at first, but with absolute force if necessary. That's the balance we have to maintain. Kind enough to deserve respect. Strong enough to command it. Wise enough to know the difference. They walked out together, leaving the empty chamber behind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new threats to face. But humanity was ready. They had proven they could be patient when patience served justice.